Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 9 Frames podcast. This is episode 65, and it is Wednesday, December 27th, 2023. I'm one half of your host, Mike Whalen. I'm going to be by myself today, actually, because Bill is a little bit under the weather, so I figured I'd get on here and just bring a little bit of a brief update on news around the league. There's not much because of the holidays, but I figured something is better than nothing. So we'll get right into it. There is a correction of a contract that we reported back on Friday, and then a couple smaller deals to get into. Be sure to catch us on YouTube at 9 Frames Podcast, Spotify at 9 Frames, and then give us a follow over on X at 9 Frames Pod. We obviously always appreciate the support. We see it. The offseason's been pretty interesting so far, with the Dodgers being uber aggressive and other teams having to pivot based on the Dodgers' actions. And we'll see what other teams have done. So back on Friday, me and Bill had reported that the Padres and relief pitcher Yuki Matsui had agreed to a deal in principle, and it was a 4-year, $21 million contract. The details have come out, and actually it turns out to be a 5-year deal with $28 million owed to him. And there is no posting fee for Matsui due to him spending 9 years in Japan. So he has all the service time over there, so there will not be a posting fee. And this deal does include opt-outs. However, we do not know where they are and how much money he's going to be making before opt-outs and after if he decides to opt in. So it will be interesting to see, but it is actually a 5-year deal for $28 million and not 4 for $21. So he's going to be getting a little bit more money, $7 million more than we originally thought, but there is an extra year. Like I said, the opt-outs are there. We'll see as the details come out more toward the beginning of the season. But it looks like a pretty good deal for the Padres, all things considered. I mean, they're going to be losing Josh Hader. They're most likely going to be losing Blake Snell. So adding any kind of arm that has the ability that Matsui does, we saw he had a 2.40 ERA in Japan. So he's 300 saves in Japan. I mean, he's a great pitcher. So we'll see if he can translate it over to the MLB for the Padres and hopefully be a staple in the back end of their bullpen for the time being. And with that, a few more smaller deals took place over the Christmas break. One is specifically interesting as catcher Mitch Garver agrees to a 2-year, $24 million contract with the Seattle Mariners, whom he has notoriously not hit well in T-Mobile Park, but he's going to be spending the next 2 years there for $12 million annually. You'd assume he's going to catch, and he's also going to designated hit a lot. It's a nice addition for the Mariners, I think, as he's going to add thump to the lineup as long as he can stay healthy. I find it interesting that he decided to stay within the AL West and leave the Rangers, who we all heard him say he had interest in returning to. So it comes a little bit out of left field that he signs a 2-year deal with the Seattle Mariners to stay in the division and not return to the team that just won the World Series with him. I think it's interesting. I think he got his money, obviously, $12 million. Even if you're a part-time catcher for $12 million, I mean, you'll take it. And Seattle's a nice enough city. It's not much of a move. The schedule is going to be very similar as it was for him last year on the Rangers. I think it's a good move. A little bit puzzling that the Rangers didn't try to bring him back for $12 million, considering how well Mitch Garver and Jonah Heim worked together, especially in the playoffs. I mean, we all remember Mitch Garver was a huge factor in the Baltimore series. He didn't play much in the Rays series, but then he came on and took over as the designated hitter for a lot of the spots because Robbie Grossman wasn't hitting for them. And Garver was a nice jolt in the middle of the lineup for them. It's going to be a spot that they're going to have to replace. We'll see what they do. Maybe it's in-house options or externally, because there are some bats out there via trade or free agency. So the Rangers are going to have to look to fill that spot that Mitch Garver is going to leave. And it's a nice get for the Seattle Mariners, who need to add some thump to their lineup with potentially losing guys like Teoscar Hernandez, who had a ton of power in the middle of their lineup. Eugenio Suarez is another one they traded to the Diamondbacks. They lost power, so it's nice to see them add it a little bit back in the form of Mitch Garver. Another former American League West catcher is also going to be on the move. This one is Martin Maldonado, 37-year-old veteran catcher, fantastic defensively, not really known for his bat as much. He spent a lot of years in Houston. The staff loved him. He's always been one of the best game callers defensively back there. He's going to be signing a 1-year deal. We're not sure how much money it is. You'd have to assume it's not too much, considering he's 37 years old and it is just 1 year. It might be a league minimum. Who knows? Maybe they give him a little bit more to get him there, but the White Sox are going to be signing him. Notably that they are going to be going through a rebuild at least for this next year. So they're deciding to go with Martin Maldonado, and they did, if you guys do remember, make that trade with the Astros to bring in Corey Lee. So now they have two ex-Astros, Martin Maldonado and Corey Lee. Hopefully, I would assume they're hoping that Maldonado can spend this 1 year in Chicago with Corey Lee and maybe train him and coach him a little bit to become a defensive catcher. And Corey Lee is obviously a more productive offensive bat than Martin Maldonado. So if he can help him out with the defensive side of the ball for the next year in Chicago, maybe the White Sox found a diamond in the rough with Corey Lee, who the Astros didn't really want, it seemed. They made that trade with Kendall Graveman earlier last year down the stretch to get into the playoffs. I mean, it was a good trade for them. Graveman he's been there before they knew him, so I see why they did it, but they did give up a young catcher, and now their veteran catcher's on the way out. So I guess we'll see what the Astros end up doing at the catching position, but the White Sox are now the new Astros at the catching position with Martin Maldonado and Corey Lee. We'll see how it goes playing time-wise. I think Lee will be the starter with Maldonado backing him up and just being more of a coach. Next, we're going to keep it in the American League. Kevin Kiermaier is going to be returning to the Toronto Blue Jays on a 1-year, $10 million contract. I love this deal for the Toronto Blue Jays and Kevin Kiermaier. He seemed very comfortable there last year. It's not a large commitment. He is getting a decent amount of money at $10 million to be the third or fourth outfielder out there. Great defensively. His bat looked pretty good last year in Toronto. He stays in the American League East, which he's been his entire career between the Rays and Blue Jays now. I saw other teams had interest in him. I wouldn't have been surprised if he left, but it does make a lot of sense to see him return to Toronto, given the year not only he had, but the Blue Jays had as they made the playoffs, and maybe they just want to run it back and see if they could add a little bit more on top of what they had last year and see if they can have a better result. I don't hate them for it. I mean, $10 million for 1 year for Kevin Kiermaier, sign me up. I mean, if the Mets would have done it, I would have been thrilled about it. I think Kevin Kiermaier is a very underrated baseball player, and he's shown that because he's had such a long career already. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to touch on was that the Mets are showing strong interest, that is in quotes, in Lucas Giolito. I put that in quotes because we've seen for numerous players that the Mets are having strong interest. We saw it with Yamamoto. We've heard it with Justin Turner. We've heard it with J.D. Martinez, now Giolito. The Mets seem to be showing very strong interest in a lot of free agents, and I think that's because they want to improve their team, obviously. I don't know what's going to happen here. I have no idea, because I do remember earlier in this offseason, Giolito was looking for like $80 million or something like that over the course of 4 or 5 years, and I don't know if the Mets are willing to give him that much money to be a guy that had a near 6 ERA over 3 teams. I mean, we'll see what happens. That's what I've been saying that a lot this episode. We'll see what happens. That's basically the theme of this offseason. Reporting has been rougher than normal. We don't really know what's true a lot of the time. A lot of reporters are going against each other, completely just contradicting each other in reports, and it's tough to figure out what's real and what's a facade or trying to drive price up in terms of free agents. But the Mets are going to continue to be aggressive, I would say, and we'll see if that aggressiveness brings them to Lucas Giolito or other starting pitching options, because there's trade with Bieber, like we were saying. We've got Snell, Montgomery, Imanaga still out there in Japan. Like, there's options for the Mets. So for them to show strong interest in Lucas Giolito, I find it to be very interesting. I've always been a fan of Lucas Giolito as well. So I've got no complaints if he comes to the Mets, as long as it's not an extreme overpay for somebody who has been struggling the way he has. And that is going to do it for episode 65 of the 9 Frames podcast. I've been Mike Whalen. I apologize that it is a little bit different with Bill not being here and us having to being able to bounce ideas and stuff off of each other. It might be a little bit different just listening to me kind of break down news, but like I said, I figured it'd be better to include any kind of episode, especially since we took Monday off. Anything is better than nothing, especially because there wasn't much going on. I just figured I'd bring the slight amount of news to you guys who are listening out there. And we appreciate it for everybody who's listening. You can, again, I'll repeat it, you can check us out on YouTube at 9 Frames Podcast. You could hear us on Spotify at 9 Frames. And we would really appreciate if you guys drop a follow on X at 9 Frames Pod. This has been really, really fun for us. We love baseball. We love covering baseball. So if you guys could continue to show the support that you have and more, we'll continue to grow and get better as the new year comes and the new season is on the way. We look forward to continuing to bring you updates around the league and look forward to the 2024 season more than anything. And with that being said, I'm going to wrap it up here. We will see you guys on Friday. Hopefully Bill is feeling well enough to join me. If not, I should be able to make another one if there is enough news between now and Friday even. But enjoy the rest of your week, and we will hopefully see you on Friday, both of us. Take it easy, everybody.